Okay.
I think I have several points now, because I'm following the argument. I'm just thinking about this ban on burning the Quran. They're burning the Bible all the time. I just think it's just fine to burn the Quran. You want to start your fireplace with the Quran, you want to film it and put it on YouTube, go ahead. I don't want to pay for a Quran in order to burn it. I don't know if there are nasty dyes in the cover that are going to fume up my home, so I don't bother burning it. But I think we really have to uphold that if you want to burn the Quran, go ahead. Otherwise, what you're arguing is that Muslims are such inferior turkeys that they can't stand having their book burned, or else they have to go like turkeys with their heads cut off. Whereas we, who are not Muslim, have better self-control. We're superior. I don't like that argument. I do not hold that Muslims are inferior. So if non-Muslims can restrain ourselves when our books are burned, Muslims can likewise restrain themselves. So I really, in other words, the battered husband thing, oh my God, I burned the toast. That's why I got beaten up. That's why they murdered the nuns and did this and did that. So that was an argument that I hadn't even thought of. But I want to say something to you. Oh, I've forgotten it because I was standing in line so long. But David, with your thing that you said early on about that people screaming you out, is that hate speech or is that really something else? A kind of violence to silence you? You know, right at the beginning you said that was hate speech against you. I didn't know if that was hate speech.
They were speaking Chinese, so somebody told me, just one thing.
When I walked down the street for 3 hours, this group kept following us. They take the subway,
Yeah.
and do you know what one of them did? I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he went,
That's hate speech. That's incitement to violence. I wish I could remember. I'm going to go to that line.
Next question.
My question is about political correctness. Your film should be shown at the local universities. There was an incident in Carleton U about some anti-abortion group trying to put up their pictures. You know, like they're practically arrested and sent away. And there was a lady conservative speaker supposed to be at the University of Ottawa. She was shouted off the stage. You know, the university is supposed to be a place of free speech.
She didn't actually make it to the room.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what do we do about that? There was an article in the Citizen or the Post during the year. Some organization takes a temperature of free speech in universities, and I believe the two local ones were just at the bottom of the list. So what's your opinion about political correct speech? Thank you.
Anybody on the panel want to?
Yeah, first, I mean, just to challenge you a bit on this, Terry, when you talk about burning the Quran. So let's say that Salman Rushdie wants to write a new novel, the Satanic Verses. I mean, then presumably that could result in. I mean, would you then put him in the same category as Terry Jones? And you know, I agree with that argument that, you know, there's a tendency in these cases that you know there's a sort of a bigotry of lower expectations if you extend that argument and saying, you know, Muslims must be treated in a different manner. And I also think that there's some of the groups that are trying to, both in the West but also in Muslim majority countries, that are trying to adopt these standards are not necessarily representative of the Muslim community as such. I mean, Muslims are not a homogenous group, and those who are the most vocal opponents of these things are not necessarily the most liberal voices, but they get to monopolize the argument and saying and draw sort of the lines for what is permissible speech about Islam, to the detriment of Muslims who might be observant Muslims but who'd like, you know, the ability to criticize and scrutinize their own religion, the same way that you've had religious dissenters in Europe who were initially persecuted, but then went on to found Christian sects that have become successful afterwards. And when it comes to political correctness, then to a certain degree, political correctness can be a good thing. I think it's a good thing that people don't run around saying nigger or some stuff like that anymore, as was once prevalent in certain parts. But when it becomes sort of suffocating, and as it may be here in universities, I think it's a real problem. But it's probably difficult to legislate about it, and that's really part of the war of ideas, and that's why something like Fred's initiative can maybe help in that
Well,
regard.
we just did a whole evening a month ago on free speech on campus, and we showed some videos of men's rights activists who were shouted down at University of Toronto, and some horrible scenes against pro-life people in the University of Waterloo. So it's a big topic to discuss. Political correctness goes. I think we don't have time to go through
No,
everything.
can I very
Sure, go
quickly,
ahead.
didn't want to leave the incorrect impression that I sort of advocate the prosecution of the Reverend Terry Jones for setting holy books on fire. I don't. I'm just insisting that actually there is a new reality that we're living in, and it is sort of a global village and all that stuff, to resort to the cliche, that we have reached a kind of a precipice, I think, at which the old admonition against the clearer lines that we used to understand about between acceptable speech and incitement and the proximity and the imminence of violence, that's broken down now. And it's broken down because of technology and things that a group of people might say privately or publicly in a place like Ottawa can be broadcast around the world in an instant and result in death and carnage in Karachi, in Cairo, in Kabul, and so on and so forth. This is the reality. And I'm just saying, I'm just pointing that out. And as much as I'd be perfectly happy to retire the habit of speech, the Prophet Muhammad, I think it would be, I'd be very happy to retire the habit of speech, political correctness. I think something very deep and dark and sinister is abroad in our culture on these questions of limits to speech and propriety of debate, that political correctness doesn't even come close to dealing with.
Yeah, sure, David.
Yes, I think the last time I looked, these days, I think it's 2/3 of the people who are being killed for their faith around the world actually are Christians. And that's a new situation, but it's quite, it's what really backs up what you're saying.
Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, just one very quick observation with respect to Terry Jones, that's who it was, the Quran burning, right? I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but we started off talking about limiting free speech to protect minorities and presumably to limit the ability of people to influence citizens negatively towards minority communities. But in the case of trying to stop this reverend from burning the Quran, we weren't actually protecting Muslims from the effect of that hateful act. We're actually talking about stopping this guy from doing it because we're afraid of the acts of the Muslims in retaliation for doing it. So I think it's an important thing to observe and to be cognizant of how the whole debate sort of, with respect to Terry Jones, turned on its head, and the whole question of incitement.
Of course, part of the whole Terry Jones problem is the fact that he could go and burn his Quran or 3,000 Qurans. The problem is when it's page one of newspapers, they give it incredible prominence and talk about it non-stop, so that it then becomes a problem and then generates more headlines.
Yeah, and just just on the point of political correctness and the whole abortion issue as well, that's an example of when we as a society become tolerant of the idea that it's okay to shut down the free expression of ideas from any part of society. That takes it a step further. That's not protecting anyone. It's not hate speech or anything like that. But the philosophy, the ideology behind it, that the way you win the war of ideas is by shutting up your opponent. Okay, that to me is a derivation of our anti-hate speech. Sorry.
Who actually believes that?
Who believes what?
That what this is about, and that there is some sort of a cause to which we are summoned, in which we must defeat the ideas of our enemy. We're getting the state to shut them down. Who actually thinks this?
Well,
certainly no one on this panel.
I doubt anyone on this panel, but I could tell you on the abortion debate for sure. That is a tactic that's used very effectively.
Ruth?
Oh, hi. I think our left-wing media has a lot to do with our problems today. And number two, I want to state, earlier this year, they had some Muslims that are going to blow up a Via train here between the United States and that. And this guy goes into our courts and he says, I do not believe in Canadian law. I want to have the book do it for me, which is he believes in the Quran. Why are our courts debating now whether to let this guy go to, with the Quran book instead of our laws? You are in Canada, it is our laws, and you abide by them, or to hell with you. And this is what ticks me off about everything that's going on, and especially the politicians that are kissing their butts.
Nobody's debating that, of course.
Next question.
Good. How many Muslims are there here tonight? Are there any Muslims here tonight? Oh, so we do have dialogue here, because if there were Muslims here, you would not have a dialogue. You see, you need to understand one thing about Islam. By definition, Islam does not allow dialogue. It is defined as a religion it's a monotheistic religion characterized by submission to Allah, an unknown quantity, and to his chief and last prophet,